So what, whatever was put into that, the other night, then we please. Sounds good to me. Thank you, appreciate everybody being here this morning. We do kick off because it is gone 9:30 and it's a public meeting. We should keep roughing the time, although we have been talking with Tamar. And I think she's just trying to find a suitable place in front of a fire in Queenstown to be able to zoom in, which is great. She's now. Oh, brilliant.
Okay.
Welcome. Hi Tamar, welcome to the meeting. So look, I'll declare the meeting open. It's the meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee. Of course, we're not that far off our last one, as I just noted before, but of course we met over the CDLPP, and we might come back to that process on that a wee bit later on. And this is our regular quarterly meeting, which is reflected in the agenda. So look, thank you, Saskia and Paul, for all the work that's been done by staff to get us to the meeting today. Sarah, you've done a lot of hard yards too, so thank you. Do we have any apologies? I think we note that Tracy is on leave for a while, lucky person. But apart from that, I think so. I don't know whether do I have to move. She's got leave approval, and we need to pass the resolution to us here.
I think we could.
Okay, well, let's sustain the fact that Tracy is enjoying a holiday in Europe. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sally. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. I haven't been informed here, everybody in public wanting to speak. So that moves us to the meeting. The last one we had was 22nd of May. We've got the minutes in front of us, so I'll move from the chair. They're taken as true and correct. Thank you, Sarah. Any discussion on their accuracy? Sarah gave me a chance just to look at them before they were published. I just recommend a couple of minor changes, but I don't think that's of any great substance. So, no other comments or questions? Brilliant. In that case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. We've got the agenda in front of us. Is anything that your interests may come into conflict with? No? All right. But yeah, that gets us into the reports. Which starts on page 14 of our agenda, which is drinking water compliance. Really, you and perhaps colleagues are going to take us through this. A very interesting. I've evidently enjoyed this report. I spent more time than I probably would want to, but I've enjoyed it reading it.
Yes, so I'll introduce Philippa Bain, who's our Water Services Customer and Compliance Team Leader. So obviously you'll be able to help on the report because does a lot of work in this space. There's so much that we have to report on now.
Yeah.
It's even just the ability to take all the information and try to distill it into some sort of a format that's easily digestible at a governance level, proving somewhat of a challenge for us. So I'll hand over to Philippa.
Well, Philippa, appreciate you being here this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I will take the report as read. In late February, early March this year, Council completed the second annual report under the Drinking Water Quality Assurance Rules. This reporting period across the board compared to 2023, we did see improvement in both and compliance, but there are still issues in both of those two parts of the reporting that we're working on. Most significantly is obviously the signing of contracts for the 3 upgrades of Cromwell, Bromford and Roller, which will address probably the most significant we've currently got. And there's continuous work and continuous improvement on the assurance rule side of things, where it's reporting and documentation and general, record keeping. So a high level overview of any questions.
I'll just add to that too. We do have funding in the budget from the 1st of July 2025 to get on with the design of the home account water treatment upgrade as well. So I think the way that's
Great. Thank you for that. Members, do you have questions for Philippa or Julie over the report?
So chances of that design taking a year and construction being in a year?
Oh, no, the construction's over 2 years.
Yeah,
that's-
but within like
yeah.
that start, and is that timeline?
It'll take
feasible
a year. Yeah, I think, thinking it'll take less than a year would be
Would be
my,
foolish? Yeah,
yeah, I'll.
But a year is
Promise.
accurate, or what is that?
They
best
should be
guess?
able to deliver the design within a year.
Okay. And there's capability to do that, that's not dependent on any.
No, we've got consultants on the panel now that we can engage to do that work, and there has been a lot of preliminary looking at things.
Yeah.
We probably will have to look again at just where we locate. There's a bit of work to do, understanding where we're going to locate the treatment plant.
Oh, yeah.
Because we've probably shifted away from its current location because it
Doesn't
it's in a flood area.
Thanks, Sarah. Any other questions?
Yep,
So, I'll go, Tamo.
I've got a couple of questions, which I think we cover off in the whole report, but I just wondered, page 16, it talks of delays of over a month when contacting TA for support, which I think, to be fair, if you're contacting and asking for support, a month delay is not really acceptable. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes.
I'll ask. Probably more carefully. It was very challenging, Tamer, and we have raised it in a recent meeting with them because they brought up the fact that we didn't have all of our information in on time, and Philippa pointed out to them, well, in part that was because we never got feedback from them on what to do. One of the challenges we have is some of the rules are set up for small supplies and on the basis that there's not continuous monitoring in place, but we actually have continuous monitoring in place, and so they don't, their structure's not set up very well to deal with that. It's almost like we'd be better not to have the continuous monitoring, but then that would provide us with less ability to know something was happening and respond to it.
And look, what I would add in defence too, through you, Mr. Chair, is I was speaking to Kaimara last week, Steve Taylor and that sort of stuff when I was up in Wellington, and like them, like other government agencies, they've had to cut their cloth and they're having to reshape their organisation with the staff resource they have, which is actually quite a big ask, really, given their responsibility.
I am interested, Tamo, you may have a second question, but if I could just follow up, I am interested in this relationship with Te Mata Arawai because they are already, but they become an important part of our water reform. I mean, they're the regulator.
Yeah.
So the relationship that we hold, or Southern Water done well will hold with the regulator, and their responsiveness is really important, I would have thought.
Yeah.
So I mean, I take your point, Peter, and I mean,
Look, and I would
and
say,
fair, but I think I'm reflecting, which is unfair on you guys, this sort of issue that Te Mata Arawai are a big player going forward.
but I think there are some ways the relationship with them is better than as with the Office of the Auditor General.
Yeah, right.
Responsiveness as we get.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you task councils around the country, they'll have the same thing. But like in this particular issue around the proposal barriers that we've been dealing with, Steve Taylor, the head of the regulatory side, rang me directly and we had a good chat about that. And I know Steve from previous occasions. So there is a good relationship that we are, so there's a collaboration there. They are the regulator. But I think it's as good as we can expect.
Do you think, Peter, that they have got appropriate resources to be the regulator, given the pressure that's going to be coming on them? I guess that's something for you and I and the other elected members to be considering. Are they actually set up to do the job they're required to do?
Well, you could ask the exact same question of the Office of the Auditor General, so on and so on. I suspect not, given their mandate.
I think one of the things that's quite challenging at the moment is, and it will continue to be challenging. We are ramping up, and we are no different to any other audit delivery organisation in New Zealand at the moment. We've probably none of us been where the expectation is that we get to, and so in that space, you're working with a regulator where you're always got a job to do. The other thing is though, I think there's been a bit of a change when the CE's changed too, that previously it was very much around, we want to help you to achieve. Now it's very much, it's where the regulator and the law says that you have to demonstrate to us how you're going to do that. So we spend quite a lot of time sometimes thinking we're demonstrating that, to find at the end that actually nothing's gonna, nothing but pure compliance is going to achieve.
Just here, tomorrow I change. Is on that matter?
Bill Bayfield.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Since then.
Yeah, okay, good.
But I think, even with what we're doing around Grenfell and Paddy Rower, you know, we will work together on comms, but that means we will prepare comms and submit them to them but they won't tell us what they want the comms to be. They'll just tell us when we've got it wrong.
When it's wrong.
Yeah, and that's the way, because they are a regulator, you know, they don't see it as their role to say this is what we want to see.
Not a great relationship when you haven't got that feedback loop, though, is it? That's hard to.
So just to continue the tomato ROI angle. So Philippa, you've submitted the report for 24. And you know, you can see, Julie, we're all, you know, there's a few things here we've got to fix clearly, and that might be understating the situation, I don't know. Do they provide us with any response about what we've returned? Is there, you know, is there sort of any sort of formality around, hey, here's our 24 report? Do they in some way acknowledge, respond? Is there, you know, you're doing the right stuff, the plans we've got in place are right? Is there any of that?
No, nothing like that. So they did, and I mentioned in the report, they have improved the reporting portal. So we've got better visibility, so we can check that what's gone into the portal is accurate to our records.
Yeah.
So that has made a big difference, and that is a real improvement. And so I guess there's kind of a bit of feedback there, so we can at least understand what they're reporting in their annual report, but there isn't a direct feedback on our compliance for the year.
So they have a legal requirement in the legislation to present a national report by a certain date, which is why we have this odd date of a calendar year rather than a financial year, because by the end of the financial year, I think it is that they've got to do their report that summarises right across New Zealand. So the timing's a bit odd for us in terms of annual reporting, but that what we will see through the annual reporting when it comes out is, it might say might have a list of councils who failed in a certain area, and we might be on that list. It might not be that we failed, it might be that there was an issue with the data. So we don't really see until the annual report process occurs what that's saying. But
that's
I think as we get on and we get the system set up more better to be able to do because that basically what you have is you have massive amounts of data that you then got to relate and do analysis on to provide the information. And so we really rely on that piece of software that we have. And I think, as we've noted in the report, two of the councils are using Audit Outlook and the Southern Audit and Well Group into using Virtua. So I would anticipate we will all try and move to the same software over the next 2 years. So we're talking internally how we might make that transition.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, look, and the only reason I raised this was, and Peter, I absolutely take your point, and you know, you've got good contacts through people like Steve. I understand that they're trying to develop their approach, but it seems like if you're a regulator, it's not just you receive information, you regulate. And my point I'm trying to understand here is, how are they regulating? The only point that you're making really at this stage is that they'll report to Parliament.
Yeah.
Which is one way of regulation, but it's at this stage pretty primitive.
I think the other thing we know is that if something happens that their attention's drawn to, then we see regulation happening pretty quickly then. And you know, in the case of Grenfell and Paddy Rower at the moment, that kind of we can kind of trace that back to having the water going out at Naseby because of an issue with the race. We then transferred water from Paddy Rower to Naseby, but it had a lower level of treatment, so that almost brought attention to a situation that we inadvertently
Creative.
creative, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Sorry, Tim, I'm conscious you said you had a couple of questions and I've taken it on down to another otherwise on. Is there anything else you wanted to raise?
Yeah, it did just have a couple. I just wondered what the differences between the Cromwell supply and the Lake Dunstan. In Cromwell, we're measuring 32 rules and then, 22 for Cromwell and 32 for Lake Dunstan when they serve the same population. Is that just because there's different types of treatment in there?
Yeah, that's right. So, under each other treatment, there's specific rules. So Lake Dunstan has membrane treatment, so they, under the membrane rules is, off the top of my head, maybe 6 or 7 rules. Whereas at Cromwell at the moment, we don't have a protozoal barrier, so we actually only report under 1 rule as non-compliant for protozoal barrier for that. Once the upgrades in place, that number of rules will change based on the UV treatment.
Perfect. And then given a lot of the non-compliance was kind of human error or paperwork based non-compliance, are we happy now that we've got that side of things covered with the new automation engineer and the other positions, or are we still a bit short in that area?
So the automation engineer, that's adding a lot of value at the moment around things like bringing, how do we put in, you know, how do we eliminate some of those things that can, if we miss a data read at a site for because the power went off or something like that, that we're covering that stuff. I would say though, the resource required to do this reporting is getting really significant, and we haven't actually brought more staff in to do that. We're using our existing staff, so we're managing just, but it does get quite stressed. And I think if they bring in this wastewater reporting, then certainly we're going to need more staff because it's too much work for the same number of people to keep trying to pick up.
Thank you. And then I had one last one, Bruce, just in that there's a huge amount of data and information in that report. Thank you. I just wondered, is there anything that you think is not covered in the report that we should be aware of on the horizon?
I mean, obviously the report did focus on the non-compliances and didn't look into detail about where we're compliant. I don't think there's anything on the horizon. I think we've included everything that we are aware of that is an issue or a potential issue.
I think the big thing at the moment is we know those protozoa barriers are not in, and they are taking a lot of attention from the regulator. But we do have issues at other suppliers from time to time as well. We do need to look at Roxburgh, and we also need to look at how we keep NASB compliant all of the time, because when we have water supply issues and demand issues, with issues. So fixing the protozoa barriers is not going to make all our problems go away. That's the top of the list at the moment, but once we get that done, we'll be expected to go down the list.
And I did have a question just about the Roxburgh one. Is that are you trying to look at other water source options currently for Roxburgh?
We have been chasing rainbows, looking at water source options in Roxburgh. And what we're probably going to end up having to do there is look at some change to the treatment process there, and might be changing UV, that unit that we use. The issue is that that's high line and the alternative source that we use. So if you're looking at it purely from a compliant water supply, it would tick all the boxes, but we know the community is going to really dislike it. It's almost higher than Alexandra was before we did. So because the people who are just looking at it from compliance go, we found the solution, let's get on with it. And we were sort of like, oh no.
Takes that shit that ticks the box.
Yeah, I know.
It's got to tick all the boxes, not just the compliance box. The level of service they would see it as being a significant drop in the service.
Yeah.
That's been really helpful, Philippa, and really, the sense of I said, what do I make of this report, which is I've found really enlightening, and I think the final question for me is our infrastructure strategy is in part based on understanding and building into the strategy and approach the information that we've got here. In other words, there's an alignment, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you mentioned obviously the structural issue of protozoal barriers at Cromwell, but had we, you talk about there are the other non-compliance, if I can put it, is that allowed for an infrastructure strategy?
So it's allowed in our budgets,
Yeah,
in our 10-year budgets, because we've pushed compliance and water at the front end.
yeah,
We don't necessarily know what the solutions are yet though, Bruce, so the budgets might not be the right budgets.
right, okay,
I put in sums of money based on sort of our best estimate.
yeah.
But as we get deeper into it, we might find it's more or less some days.
Oh, look, and it's going to be continual improvement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that actually, when Philippa, you've done your 25 year report, there's going to have to be that circularity of checking, is this right? Then infrastructure strategy, does it meet our financial strategy, etc. So I get that. I'm just looking to see that we have that alignment in place with best estimates at the point in time we've actually got them, which is really, really important. I am interested in your point about the cost of this. Just trying to get my head around it. This might be easy, you do your 4 breakfasts every day of your life, Philippa, but my head was spinning trying to work through the math. Not that I tried to work too hard through the math, but it was just phenomenal. This worries me, can I say, not because of the math, but actually your point that it is a compliance regime which is going to become critical for us. And I saw this in the, I shouldn't be saying this to you, Philippa, but your role within the equivalence within the electricity industry is really important, which is invaluable, because actually we have to find the best way to keep talking with our regulator, and you've got the economic regulator coming on your back as well. And as you've seen, Wellington Water specifically have them on their back now. So this is going to be not only a matter for SWDW, it's a matter for us going forward now that we can handle the compliance requirements, which is, not insignificant.
I think what I would say, Bruce, in terms of the infrastructure strategy is we haven't redone our estimates for if this was to stay in-house.
Yeah.
For what the staffing and the cost requirements will be to meet the increasing regulatory environment that we're in. And inevitably there's going to be, you're just about going to have to build a whole compliance team around the economic and the drinking water and the wastewater stuff, which is a significant size team. It could be half the size of the water team that we've got now.
Right.
And so I think that becomes challenging when we're looking at Southern Water done well in comparisons, because I doubt any of the councils really looked very hard at, okay, we're going to need to increase our operating expenditure for business as usual by this amount of money, because we were sort of looking at the CCO option, and it's been
the new company is going to have to address this. There's a significant, I mean, again, there's the benefit of being, I should be careful, we've got to make a decision yet, but I mean, there's the benefit ideally of aggregating. You're going to have one team doing it.
Yeah.
But man, you've got to have a team that are hot shots at the standards.
Yeah, and they need to really understand the data, and
that's right, which is why you're even
precise.
talking about the traverse as the other and getting that aligned as quickly as you can is important. Okay, that's good. Well, that's really helpful, thank you. Good to see the alignment with infrastructure strategy. Good to see that we we're comfortable. We know where we're at. The funding, the solutions, and the funding may be more difficult as you go forward, but it's giving us the information base we need. So well done. Particularly Philippa, you're the data queen here. So well done. That's tremendous. So with that hard yards, all we're doing is receiving the report, but I hope the conversation for both elected members and also for yourself, Julie, and Philip, is supportive. We understand how this fits, and it's a really important part. And I think it'd be fair to say that as a risk committee, we would be interested to see the 25 report in due course when it comes out, which would be great. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sally. I've got to move in a second until we receive the report. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, it's carried. Thank you for that, you guys. That was believe it or not, I think I have read the policy report as much as I did the water report. So welcome to you guys. So be interested to see what you'd like to
Can you
raise with us, please.
And we'll run through the policy part quickly and then spend a little bit of time on A reviews.
Yep.
So we've exceeded the target again as a business. We're sitting at 93.69. Business support only has financial reserves out of date. Community experience, I expect them to come back up with the return of that policy. There's 2 property items in planning and infrastructure that we expect to lapse temporarily and then come back into date. That's earthquake prone buildings and community leasing and licensing. The roading policy, I'm making it a purpose to update each time. So they are roughly a quarter of the way through that in terms of the draft to bring and circulate. It's become quite a big job as they've decided to do a rewrite and separate out the procedural elements that are in there. So they're just having to go through very, very carefully and make sure they're not removing anything legislative as they do that. And the next checkpoint on that is the 27th of June. I'm meeting with the team to have a look at where they've landed. The other one to highlight too that may lapse, but again temporarily and within what legislation allows, is the dog policy and dog bylaw, because they're due right up at election time. So we're likely to hold that back and consult after the election. And then just to highlight too, that does mean there are 4 bylaws on the calendar for this year or into early next. Trading in public places, the one that I'm working on, parks, that's well underway, good has finished the draft. That roading piece that Holly's up to, and the dog one. On 17A reviews, we decided to leave this one as verbal because we just weren't sure how much to pop in writing because these are all dealing with contracts. So at the time we reported to you on 17A reviews, we said there wasn't a lot of evidence we did them in one place, but it was likely we did. And we decided to break that down by looking at the 4 biggest ones, and the good news is we were able to find a 17A review for each. So the 3 waters approach, Julie started reporting on 17A reviews in January 2024, and that one's continued. Both roading and waste had formal 17A review processes. Roading went through each of the 4 steps as laid out in the Act and concluded that it would stick with the current approach, where most work is outsourced to a contractor, although there is a Whakaputahi approved business unit for some core functions. In waste, they're continuing to explore regional delivery of some different elements of the waste network and facilities, and the rollover dates of each contract are getting closer aligned to allow those discussions to continue. And then in the park space, that is a large Delta contract, and they did complete a 17A review around 2017, so it could be repeated in the next few years. And they looked at the 2 options there of in-house or contracting and determined that the contracted role was cheaper. And then in practice, there are some smaller examples of informal 17A reviews. I think we've got 3 roles around this table that were created out of consulting budgets. That's myself, Amelia and Duncan, where the ELT team found that the expenditure was such that our roles would bring it down. And we like to think it's done so.
Good on you, be positive.
If you do take back and dig in any more detail, it's a bit of a rough one to that. It's really coming down to that clause there. If the local authority is satisfied the potential benefits do not justify the cost of undertaking the review, and the advice we're getting back from people in the space all the time is that those costs are just hugely prohibitive for an organisation our size. So that's about where we're at. I can see you highlighting everybody questions, so I'm just going to pull up my register.
You've probably answered enough. You have questions for Alex or Amelia while we're here. Let me just run through mine. I don't think they're particularly, they're not. I agree with you, by the way. You talked the percentages above what you wanted to get to, and clearly you're keeping, and even in my short time on the committee, I think I've seen a great improvement. The financial reserves policy you mentioned, what is that? It just struck me odd that it was out of date given we're doing a CD and an LTP.
Using the reserves in places.
Probably using our reserves, that's exactly, that's right.
All the funds.
Are we, I mean, it's really what I'm saying is we're making key financial decisions, Paul, at the moment. It's called the LTP. How significant is that we've got we've been implementing something around our reserves and got an out-of-date policy?
Yeah, if I can answer that. The financial reserves policy has been superseded by the districtisation, and I know that's not a word, but the discussions around that and the process there. So we have used the LTP process where we needed to utilise reserves that were available. But given that pretty much all of the activities going forward will be coming from a district pot, we then have to decide what we do with the localised reserves and how they get used. So we are not proposing to do anything about that until the new financial year. That gives us a little bit of time. We want to get that in place before the elections so that the current council can complete effectively the process that was started with districtisation.
Right. So, a very good point about districtisation. But what you're saying is there are residual reserves there which would have related to the old policy and more particularly the community boards.
Yes.
Just where to solve
Yeah.
with those.
Yeah.
And the current LTP doesn't, what's the word? Breach, if I can call that, what the community might understand what happened with those reserves.
Given
I'm trying to get to the bubble.
No, I understand what you're saying. Given that the LTP comes into effect on 1 July, so any decisions that are made now to use reserves will be under what we call the old regime, if you like.
Okay, that's the key thing. Yeah.
So the issue is going to be once we're into the new space. How do we utilise reserves so they don't become stranded reserves, which is the fear that once they're into the new regime, how do they get used, or are they just going to sit there forever and a day? And that's not useful to anybody. So we need to have that
keep
that work done.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Oh, that's. I'm glad that's active, shall we say, because it looked like it was just one of those things that was sitting out there. Alex, I see on page, cyber
security?
Yeah, cyber security plan. There were actually a couple of entries there. I can't actually, I said 79. Perhaps I'm wrong, might be the wrong page. Can you tell us anything about that? We have obviously a cyber security briefing under PX, but it looked like there was an out-of-date report there around cyber security. Have I got that wrong?
It's January 2025, but it doesn't have a month attached to it, so I believe it's not yet
I
checked.
think what I kind of reflect on, we've been receiving a report regularly around cyber security with a particular strategy and plan in place. And I was just wondering whether in fact we were perhaps I was trying to relate the two. Actually, are we really out of date or nearly out of date? But we can ask that.
Definitely not be out of date, but I can bring you some notes on that to the next week if you like.
We can ask that. We can ask that. We can ask that. So when we get to a PhD this afternoon, that should be this morning, delay. I just was intriguing. The open spaces and recreation policy isn't due for review until 2040.
Oh, that's a typo. That should be 2030.
Was it? I thought it could have been 2040 if you're looking for certainty, but that was intriguing. Okay, that's
like to review things in about 5-year gaps if we can.
Right. And one of the things that I actually, again, should interest this committee, and we do have a role, is the delegations policy. And I think it's due in July. Is it going to be done in July, and what's going to be our role?
I can talk to that one.
Yes,
So we're going to bring it all with the new training. So we are putting our delegations into local delegations software. So as part of that, we're doing a fundamental review of our delegations. So we have the register of delegations that sits at the councillor level and delegates certain things to Peter. And from that, we then have a staff delegations. there was never really a thorough review when it was split out about 4 years ago, I think it was now.
Yeah.
And we're finding inconsistency. So Amelia's leading that project, so that will be later in this year. And definitely if the committee would want to have an input into that, we could bring something to the September meeting.
Well, I'm only saying that, Saskia, because actually paper says we have an interest in coming to audit and risk.
Oh, well, there we
We
go.
have
There we go.
responsibility.
We'll bring
So
it
that-
to September.
Sorry, it was more a case of, I mean,
Sounds good.
if you've been going to tell me, Bruce, it's an operational, clear out, I might have been open to that argument as well, but it was more how do we support the process through what I'm trying to do. Peter, I would be, and it might be operational, I would be interested to see it, but it's more to understand that we have control in place rather than, I don't think I have a particular role or indeed probably even expertise in saying who should or shouldn't be able to sign something off, but it would be interested to see just the controls in place. So Saskia, as and when it fits in with, making certain operations are efficient, but I would be interested to understand it.
Sounds like we could be in a position for the September meeting to have a conversation with the committee.
Yeah, okay, brilliant, that'd be good. Where am I up to? Oh, 83. Just I told you I read this. So the drinking water quality policy statement. Now, do we have to have one? We've
Yes,
just
illegal.
got the new regime.
It's a legal requirement,
Oh.
so we've been talking about bringing that up to council. It's a relatively simple statement, but it probably needs to be remade.
Yeah, okay. I just noticed it's March 20, and I just wondered whether in fact the new regulatory regime has overtaken this, but if it's requirements, so, okay.
And
that's good.
government's level councils were required to make a commitment to ensuring that water sources are kept safe.
Yeah,
So that probably spans more broadly than just the water team too. It's around our development activities.
yes. Okay,
resource
oh, good
management,
point.
and making sure that
Yeah,
considering whether those things affect water quality.
great. That's really helpful. Oh, that's good to know. And look at the bylaws. I think Alex did mention those. Some look like they are out of date. Is that a problem for us enforcing them?
Is this in the water space?
Yeah, water supply and soil lateral.
Making a list of all the things that we're going to have to do because the legislation coming through, new legislation coming through, and the existing legislation has a whole heap of other things now that we have to do as well.
Yeah.
So we're making a list. There are things like the bylaws where we're thinking it might be worth us working with our other 3 councils to come up with a consistent one. So, yeah, it's, to be honest, there's a lot of work and we have limited resource, so we are sort of having to prioritise what we're working on.
Well, I'm thinking of bylaws have a certain statutory ability to act, and if we're out of date, have we lost the ability?
We have, I believe, I don't think we could rely on those bylaws.
Yeah, so like things like, the most obvious one is that soil lateral policy.
So the soil lateral policy, that was really about, so that some of these things are not that drastic, like the soil lateral policy is around where do we stop the extent of our service and where does the landowner take responsibility. So there's an indication that next might actually come through in the legislation that's coming through, so I might get rid of the need to even have that policy.
Right, yeah, that's cool. Well, that's got to be done. Thank you. Any questions, Sarah, Sally, Homa? Thank you, appreciate that. I got fixated on that last night, but I thought I'd better have a look at it and read it. So thank you, Alex, appreciate that. I'm going to move, so I've asked all the questions that we received. Second, please.
Oh,
Thank you, Sally. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, it's carried. Sarah, we have auditors anywhere near us?
Back online.
Oh, is that online? Oh, there we go. Chantel and Yvonne. G'day, Chantel. I see you.
Hello. Yvonne's there in the background.
Hello.
Yvonne is,
Hello, everyone.
Yvonne, how are you? Good to see you as well. Thank you. Thank you for being here, you guys, and I appreciate that. Paul, we've got, if I've got correctly, the draft report for last year to go through, and we've also got the an engagement letter, and we have also got the plan for this year, which we've had a broad discussion, I think, well, perhaps I've had with Chantel and Yvonne previously, so to go through as well. How do you want to take it, mate?
I thought since we have both auditors online, and since it's Chantel's last dealings with us from an annual report perspective, that maybe Chantel could kick off with the audit report, the draft that we've responded to. Really, if I can just sort of take that report as read, if you want to do it that way, Mr. Chairman, or Bruce, sorry. There are, there are some recommendations that the audit team have made. Our responses are in there, and we're open for discussing those before we finalise it through council next week, and then send it on to Audit New Zealand to finalise at the auditor's end. So I think we'll just box on with the audit report first.
Good. We've got a separate paper, and we sorry over the rest. Thank you for that, Chantel. If you'd like to just give us a quick heads up, as Paul says, we have read the reports and drafts, so give us the snapshot, please.
Thank you. Yeah, although it was sort of an extended audit last year, it was a good audit. I think we worked through a lot of issues to get a good standard of annual report last year. We have raised, I think it's 6 findings with regards to this. Most of them were related to the stuff that we were seeing in the sector. The first item was the inconsistency of the 23-24 rates. We've made a recommendation around that. The road smoothness measure, which I think was quite a focus area within the sector last year for entities that had this selected as a material measure. We did an extensive amount of work with regards to trying to determine whether or not there was a material error with regards to the estimates that were being used on the measure last year. Our conclusion was there was no material misstatement, but that there were improvements that could be made in terms of assessing the estimates for reasonableness to be used in the underlying calculation for the road smoothness number. We also raised some findings around unit rates, completeness of wastewater assets, and the completeness of the interest register. Yeah, I'm happy to take any questions with regards to the paper. I see management has agreed with 3 of them, and I don't know if those are the ones we want to sort of focus in on from a discussion perspective.
Right, let's see how we go. I'd like to, we do have, in taking it as read, we do have both the recommendation and management comment. I just wonder whether indeed the state members, you've got questions you want to raise first, and then perhaps I'll lead the charge through 1 or 2 aspects. So, Sarah, Sally, Tamo, any questions you want to raise with Chantel or Paul at the stage?
My one's just the recommendation on page 99, which I do keep bringing up, and it looks like we will have it nailed for our setting our June rates, and that last year we did have a document attached to the rates that was incorrect, and it looks like we've got some good balance and checks in place for this year when we strike the rates.
I can comment on that.
Go for it, Bob.
Yes, we have already sent the rates resolution off to Simpson Grierson. Jonathan Salt is reviewing that for us. So you won't be resolving an attached report. You will actually be resolving the full rates. It's going to be 4 pages of, and I hope you don't read them when you're presenting it, but what we have done is separated the 2. So the long-term plan has been done. It has what's called funding impact statement for rating in it, and the rating resolution reflects that, and that's what Jonathan's checking and making sure that we've covered ourselves off legally. So we should not have the same issue this year as we did last year.
And I suspect that is good money well spent.
Absolutely.
To be honest.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was interested in the comment around Jonathan's, well, you know, what was in the letter, etc. About, you know, what is the risk, and we obviously were able to, in order to take that as a low risk. But it's great that we've got it nailed. It's one of those things. It's just crazy not to. It's just crazy to run the risk. So thank you for that. Any other questions, Tamar, Sarah, Sally, that you'd like to raise at this point?
I think you're right, the road smoothness is, it's one of those, it's in here as a, it's necessary.
Yeah.
At what point is taken into consideration breadth and depth of the region, and the cost balance of that work? I think it's more of a conversation than just a we must do it and we must comply. Right, where is the risk in that if we're not compliant, but what's the threshold of compliance or non, partial compliance, partial reporting? Where do we go with it?
Yeah, I wanted to get some clarity from management as to, I mean, it seems like we're not going to do it, or rather we don't want to. But I just wonder if I get some clarity from management, what actually is the recommendation? Quite a big blunt.
Yeah, well, if QP was here, I think.
Yeah.
Correct, but we have 2,000 kilometres of roads.
That's right.
The challenge for a council of our size is how practical it is to do a count every second year. And that across that entire network. And that's the challenge that all small councils have with a large road network. And so we have good inspection posts in place and that sort of stuff. Can it be done in that way?
Is there any discussion around this? This must be a sectoral issue. We're not the only council, with low density, high roading network. Southland does. Even places like Central Hawke's Bay have, small population and large roading networks. So we can't be in a unique position here. Any views on that? Sorry, it's Nick.
Yes, Nick.
Thank
It's beyond my warehouse, sorry, Bruce, but yeah, it would be interesting. I'm sure, QP were here and be able to fill in the gaps, but I'm sure those connections have been made.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a couple of things, Peter, that are on my mind here. One, I get the cost, and it seems challenging. It's almost unfunded mandate. Well, it's not quite, I suppose. If we want to provide the service, perhaps you could argue you have to do the minimum. We ain't going to get this right for 24, 25. No. We obviously haven't changed it. So we have a period to try and work this one through. And I'm just wondering if you could come back to us with a final position as to where you stand on this. I think I'm wanting to reflect. I'm open to the debate. My concern is, I haven't seen the complete suite yet of what's going to be required by the DIA's benchmarking position. I don't know whether this one falls within that one. Do we know that? I mean, obviously you've got stuff.
Actually, I don't think this is in there. I'm pretty sure it's not.
That might colour my views. I mean, I should be careful because, of course, we report on this externally as well, and I count an unqualified opinion. Really, really important. But I think, I am open to the cost versus quality debate. I think if we're going to get into people are falling on the league tables, and that's probably even unfair on DIA. It could be challenging that we can't have a measurement system that is satisfying that. But if it's a cost thing, we need to have it out. But I just think, Paul, as I say, too late now for 24, 25, as far as I can see. 25, 26, though, we need to have a position reasonably soon as far as that's concerned that you would want to recommend to us that we take on this. Is that possible?
I've been talking to the council, given that three audits will be leaving us 2027.
Yeah.
That's, I use the term as probably the Great Reset CAPC. In that we then can focus on the big infrastructure pot that's going to be left, which will be roading. I'm wondering whether that's leading up to that. That's the time that we should be thinking about what and how we're going to deliver those services and measure how successful we are in them.
Okay, well, that might be part of the process that you might come back to, but I do think I need something separate.
And QP's here, who is in charge of roading.
Thank you. Yeah, QP, I mean, we're just you know, the response to the smoothness thing is this big cost factor here.
Yeah.
And I don't deny that. So I'm just interested to know really where staff are coming from, or, you know, are sitting on in terms of what it looks like. Do we change direction? It sounds like there's a bit of budget, but all our budget would go on this, is in contrast to having a stronger, or rather a view across the whole network.
Yeah, so we have a comprehensive traffic count program where we have a series of traffic counters. We've actually just purchased some more to enable us to do some additional counts throughout the year, but we do a very standard process across all local authorities. Do the same process. We do a range of traffic counts and then we do estimation based on that for the remainder of the network, and that's an input into the smooth travel exposure measurement. To do traffic counts on every road section is almost impossible. It's multiple staff. It's an astronomical cost, but I guess the value will be probably delivering what that would then be used for. So we are looking at doing more, but probably not the expectation that is there. However, how we do it is aligned to like the Tethering and Momoa Road Efficiency Group guidelines around traffic counts and traffic count estimation. What we're doing is not indifferent to anywhere else across the country. So yeah, hence sort of our challenge around that and trying to get a clear answer out of Audit around their expectation, because yeah, without significant upheaval and cost,
You can't move it.
yeah.
Is the efficiency group looking at that and discussing that at a national level? I mean, let's kind of be honest, this measure has got everybody pinged. Not pinged is the wrong word, and I shouldn't be unkind on Chantal for saying that, but this has reached the you know, clearly the audit view and test for good reason.
Yeah, we do have a road efficiency group meeting coming up next week where we're going to table it following this feedback. So that's the first one since our audit findings and report. So it's, yeah, we're going to be working through that just to make sure if that's the guidance we are giving back as staff, it is aligned to other TLAs and that, to make sure we're not just the odd one out as part of this. But from what I understand is we're absolutely not.
Good. Well, in that case, Peter, that does get me back to the position where I think it'll be interesting to hear what you come out of your work with the efficiency group, QP. We had a bit of time to think about this, and whether it goes out as far as you're talking before, I don't know, but I think we, you know, there is a sectoral need to respond to something which is a natural measure to have. I don't debate the need for the measure if I'm thinking about good public accountability, which Chantal and the auditors are working to, but I do think you need, I'm not going to argue that we should be outside normal conventional measurement and process, and if one doesn't meet the other, we've got a sectoral issue, we haven't got a central Otago issue, and I don't think we should be trying to let it pack. We can't afford to be. Okay, well, if we leave it that way, we'll see where we get to as far as that's concerned. Chantal, look, I should offer you any comments or questions, given you've heard the discussion here. We're taking it seriously, first of all, but maybe you have any sort of comments.
Yeah, you know, that's exactly it. It's about making the appropriate decision for the council. So our recommendation is based on what we believe would be good practice in terms of counts. And you're right, it was sort of heavily discussed. It's been through a number of opinion review committees within the Office of the Auditor General and within Audit New Zealand. And we've worked through in terms of our expectations. From Central Otago's perspective last year, the roads that hadn't been counted within a 3-year period were the ones that didn't contain high traffic volumes. So all the primary roads and secondary roads within Central Otago had been counted within the 2-year period. I think it was the 2 or 3 year period. We only identified probably about 20 roads that had more than a 50% difference between the count and the estimate. In terms of the calculation of road smoothness, the biggest factor is coming in terms of the estimation process. And the estimation process needs to be based on fact. The longer out the counts are from a point in time, the less accurate the estimates become. And that's where the challenge around reporting is important. And I think that's potentially where council's response needs to come in and say, we intend on doing these low volume roads every 5 years because we believe that there's no significant change. Although Central Otago does have sort of quite active growth numbers. So we just need to make sure that those estimates, those counts are all aligning with the expectations of the area.
That's really helpful. Thank you for that. So if you look, I agree, I doesn't change my position. Let's find out what happens. But thank you for characterising really the audit test and in some sense the assumption test we have to meet, which is the point where our estimation is updated by actuals. Again, it's a question of what is rational within constrained budgets. I get that. Thank you. Thank you, John Kell. The only other thing then was in terms of the recommendations, I think we're saying we'll take a broader view around contract rates, Paul, and yeah, but that's fine. Then there's the question of members being upfront about their interests. And actually, who actually within the organisation has that responsibility? My view has always been it's been on the individual member, which I think is essentially what you're saying.
Yes.
I just wonder, is it explicit for members as to what they have to declare? Is it a way that could be suggested they could do their own homework by, for instance, checking the company's register?
I don't see that as being a problem. I think that given advice as to where to look is appropriate. Again, I agree with you that it's the member's responsibility. I think the Act is quite clear in that.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's certainly something for, particularly given the time of the year where it's going to be induction territory with the new council. So I'm sure that will be part of the updating as far as that's concerned. Sorry, there was completeness of waste assets here, but I think that's probably okay. Rightio. Look, that's really good. I did look through the outstanding recommendations, Paul. The only one that said there was no progress was fully depreciated assets. We got a few still hanging around there. We have zero balance, but we use them.
We do, and we look at it from the point of view that it's probably, given the resource constraints that we had at the time, maybe not so much now with the team within finance, the full team that we have, we'll get to looking at that over the next 12 months.
Good. So
another point is that there are actually a few assets in there which are fully depreciated that we actually still own as well.
So that we
still own as well.
Yeah.
But there is a project in place where we will be looking at the assets that are fully depreciated and some of this part of this year's end of year assets with our revaluation and stuff, our parks and reserves. That's just tidying those up as well.
Great, that's good. Okay, so we'll really see this as in progress next time around, if not nailed. So that's good news. Thank you. Rightio. So look, that's it. John Tell, probably a wee bit. Well, and Conrad, you raised it in the report. You said extended, but basically a good audit. I like the fact that you talk about the control environment, internal controls. I think basically being in line, but you're going to ask us for some more money for the audit, correct?
Yes.
How much?
So it's still being worked through. What we've agreed to do is we're having a discussion with Paul. I think it's been put down for the 2nd or 3rd of July, where we're having a discussion in terms of, what we believe the additional scope was, discussions with council to make sure that we're in line in terms of where that is, and then taking it through to the OAG for approval before sending it through to you.
Okay, look, that's fine. I'll thank you. There's a process in place, and I like the way it's going, which is that there's a discussion with us first, rather than the sort of the valid imprint of it coming directly from the IAG saying you're entitled to negotiate. So, Paul, I'll leave it in your hands to discuss that with Chantel, and we'll get one through, which would be superb.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, Chantel, because I think the next items are with Yvonne.
Mm.
Are you doing the LTP as well?
I am. I don't know if you'd like a little bit of feedback in terms of where we are from an LTP perspective, if that would be helpful.
That'd be helpful while we got you on the line, thank you, because I was going to raise that later. So tell us now, please.
So we are busy doing our final checks in terms of the updated LTP document. I think we got on Friday. We are intending to go to hot review this week. The main focus has been around checking what the changes were from the consultation document section through to LTP. And what we've done is we've checked that all those changes have been agreed back to deliberations and decisions that were taken through the deliberation process. We are working through some of the assumptions that are new. So the inclusion of some of the halls and the vested assets items, and the ever-present transfer of your water assets and the creation of the CCO. What we are doing is we're working with Paul and the team to be able to show that reasonable assumptions have been taken to the point of producing the LTP. And what we've done from a water perspective is we've looked at it under 3 categories. So we've looked at it under assets, under borrowings, under operational costs, and under revenue. Now, the assets and borrowings we checked quite extensively through the consultation process to make sure that the assumptions that have been attached to valuation increases, et cetera, were correct. As well as for borrowings, the only change that has happened with borrowings is the fact that the council is now credit rated, which is helpful for the council, but from an accounting perspective, we need to make sure that those judgments all still remain relevant. What we've also had to consider is whether or not, with the creation of the CCO and the consideration of whether or not the debt will be seen as just belonging to the CCO, or whether or not it will still be under the banner of the council, whether there are any implications to the interest rates that would be charged. And if the credit rating were to drop and therefore your interest rates increase, whether there's any consideration we need to make through the LTP process. Thankfully, Donna and Paul have been able to assure us that there's an appropriate hedging regime in place, so any increases or decreases would not be felt too extensively through the process. So we've finished that work. The 2 remaining items, which are operating costs and revenue, have been a little bit more challenging in terms of looking through the assumptions. And that has to do with whether or not there'll be any future revenue that comes from the CCO, as in whether or not there's an agency arrangement in place with council, potentially just in the short term, but could be longer term, and whether or not any such revenue should be accounted for through the LTP, as well as looking at the stranded operating costs that may be left after the transfer of water. Now, obviously, it's quite early in the process. Your final decision hasn't been taken. And what we are likely to have to do in that front is determine whether or not reasonably we could have expected the council to have made an assumption with regards to those items. Paul has written a paper for us, which we are putting into our hot review documentation. We're supporting the view in terms of the fact that reasonably no final decision has been undertaken. But these may need to be considered through a joint opinion review committee with the Office of the Auditor General. I've been pushing from my end to have it as a joint opinion review committee, so all councils in a similar position to Central Otago are considered under the same discussion. which I think will be helpful because it'll mean there'll be consistency in terms of the outcome of that. In terms of impact on your audit opinion, we are currently recommending through the HOT review process that you will have the 2 emphasis of matters that you had through the consultation document stage. So the emphasis of matter on the uncertainty of the Three Waters transition and the emphasis of matter with regards to the uncertainty with regards to land sales, which is supporting your balanced budget. That's where we stand at the moment.
That's really helpful, and I must confess it's played a bit with my final call, but is there anything else you'd like to add to that? That's just really helpful to get that understanding where we're at with the
All I can really add to that is I agree with everything that Chantel said, and I really appreciate the effort that Chantel and her team have put in to help us get this thing over the line on time. I mean, I said it last time, even to the extent of preparing the journals to help us get that thing, to get it sorted. And I think if we can come away with this and have it adopted before the 30th of June, I think it's a great effort, and it's really a good input from the auditors. They've been very, very helpful to get us to this point.
Thank you for that, Paul. That's really good. And Chantal, it's music to my ears that you let me know your position on our paper, which you're supporting, and also looking for a joint talk to speed things up. That's a really good sign, dare I say. I agree with what you're saying, Paul, that you're trying to make every post the winning post. So we'll have to see where that one goes. Okay, look, with that, thank you. I would like to keep moving. I've just looked at my time, sorry, I've been a terrible chair today. So with that, I would like, and obviously there's other times to thank you, by the way, where this got to, Chantel. We'll see you back with the LTP stuff. Can I move to the recommendation, which is that we receive the report? I'll move that. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Sally. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. You'd like to get something 23, 24 out of the way. Yvonne, welcome to the meeting. We have an engagement letter here. And I was just checking with Paul that is that obviously with a new director, I think it's good to have a new engagement letter. But also I think we are going to be due to renegotiate our fees for the next 3 years. Is that correct? Yvonne?
Oh, yes. We have not agreed on 2025 June audit fee yet, which is part of the last fee round, 2023 to 2025. So the fee proposal letter backed in has a provision of 2025 audit fee. However, we have not agreed on that yet. Yes, the upcoming fee negotiation round for 2026 to 2028 will come up, presumably later in the year, before Christmas, hopefully, or around that in the new year.
Right, so this engagement letter then, we don't have the fee letter at this stage, and that's something that Paul and Donna will deal to. This engagement letter really reflects the fact that you are now personally signing the opinion, and we need to re-establish the new the new relationship and effect between you as the audit service provider through this engagement letter, correct?
That's right.
Brilliant. Okay. Is there anything in this letter that's anything other than standard? It looked pretty standard to me.
Yeah, it's a pretty standard letter.
Great. Okay. Well, I think we can then deal with the motion. Members, is there anything in the letter that you wanted to raise? So really, it's going to relate for the next 3 years, or indeed certainly why Yvonne is our audit director, sets out pretty much our responsibilities, etc. To be honest, it struck me as fine. But look, is there anything in there, and particularly given we're going to recommend you sign Tamer, is anything in there that crossed your mind that you want to raise questions on at the moment? There being none, let's move to the.
Sorry, no, I had a look through. No, it looks good to me, thanks.
Okay, so we are going to receive the report, and we note level or accept level of significance. We approve the engagement letter as presented and recommends it to council for approval. So council's got to do it, We recommend to council that you, Tamer, sign it. And, we're going to sorry, we haven't dealt with the actual audit plan, sorry. So we dealt with the first three. Yvonne, I'll cut you off at pass. Do you want to talk us through the audit plan, please, really quickly?
Yes, sure. Paul, would you like to bring the slide up?
Yep, we saw that one is that. What we want to is on she sees. I can read it through the phone. From supplemental period, some okay. That's the only something that's in that, but also. Yeah, no ground.
There we go, there we
Loading.
It's all good. I'm a behind team, so we will keep things moving here.
We can make I can just start while the slide is loading. Yeah.
Sorry to put you in the pressure.
Yeah, that's all right. So hi everyone, Kayla Kato. My name is Yvonne Yang. I thought I'd just start with a bit of a brief introduction of myself. I'm an audit director in Audit New Zealand Christchurch office. I'm taking over CODC statutory annual audit, obviously from the 30th June 2025 financial year. I joined Audit New Zealand in 2021 as a appointed auditor. Since then, I've been carrying out a portfolio mainly focusing on local government and also the tertiary sector as well. Prior to that, a little bit about me. Just a career prior to Audit New Zealand, I have worked at 3 different global offices in Deloitte, Shanghai, London, and Christchurch. Audited both private and public sectors. Definitely acknowledge the change of appointed auditor twice in 3 years is not ideal to the council, but hopefully I could bring a fresh pair of eyes and values to the council, to the auditors committee and management as well. I haven't seen the slides, but do you want me to share?
It's fine, I've got them here.
Okay, thank you. So we have provided 2025 audit plan and audit engagement letter that you guys just discussed, and also, thank you so much, Sarah. Appreciate it. Can you turn the next page for me? Okay, so I'll be covering a overview of the audit plan and also our current status update and the draft audit fee proposal that bring for discussions after our discussion with management. Next slide, please. And next, please. Thank you. We summarized this page with the audit plan that you have seen in your pack, with the key areas of audit focus, which are variation of property, plant, equipment held at fair value of investment property, accounting for impairment, capitalization of costs and recognition of completed assets, and risk of management override of internal controls. These are pretty consistent from prior year. They are sector focus area from OAG audit brief. Obviously, local water done well for you, southern water done well. We see how they play out and disclosure requirement in the annual report for 2025 is the 3 other items that bring true interest are the mutual liability risk pool theme and amendments to the audit fee disclosure and the benchmark reporting that DIA is running at the moment. For the material performance measure, we identify a couple new material performance measure as they are important for either decision making or assessing accountability. We also have ensured that we take a consistent approach to the selection of material performance measures for the councils that are inherently similar. The new performance measure wastewater number of complaints and the rolling asset quality review of assets. After revalidation, we have crossed out the wastewater system adequacy as we already selected the new number of complaints instead. Next slide, please. And just bring on the snapshot for the 2025 annual report audit. I think first of all, I would really like to thank management for the professionalism and assistance throughout the process, because the long-term plan is almost just running parallel on the same time. They are juggling between the two audits. Really appreciate that. Obviously, the long-term plan process this year has been particularly challenging. We started our interim and planning during April, which is really just the gap between the CD and the long-term plan. Really appreciate their efforts and in assisting our queries and requests. Our current percentage of completion is around 20% as of the end of the May. And we understand that the council intends to revalue all the property, plant, equipment at fair value model as at 30th June 2025. So far, we have not identified any significant control deficiencies. However, the general information technology controls assessment is still underway. We will not do an interim management letter obviously conscious of the time and the effort into long-term plan at the moment. We will report new recommendations and then the status of prior recommendation in our final report to the council in the end. So bring on the next couple slides is the fee proposal. As just indicated previously, that the 2025 audit fee has not been agreed as part of the 23-25 fee negotiation. So when we budget our audit fee, we start with a estimation of our audit hours. Our current budget agreed hours are 903 hours. So sits on the left bar there, the 2024 budget, 903 hours, which is significantly lower than what was incurred for 23 and 24, the actual hours. For 23, the actual hours incurred 1,582, and the 2024 sits at 1,472. On the right-hand side, we have also looked at 3 comparable councils' audit hours, all of them are above 1,000 audit hours. Just note that usually in the fee proposal budget hours, we only assume 1 infrastructure variation per year. So either free waters or roadings, which are the significant parts of a local government infrastructure assets. Our common practice is to leave the one-off matters such as the additional infrastructure variation towards the end for fee recovery process. Obviously, from the previous slide, we understand that council intends to revalue all the property, plant, equipment at fair value model as at 30th of June 2023, which is a full variation for all the asset class at fair value model. We do not consider the 903 hours to be realistic. We have signaled this to management. We had a bit of a discussion with Paul and Dana a couple of weeks ago. We agreed to rebudget the audit hour and bring the change of audit scope fee increase upfront, rather than leave it cost overrun to the end, given we're already quite cleared about the change of scope in the current year. Next slide, please. This is just for bring for discussion to the table at the moment is the main reasons for changes in hours for the budget fee in 2025 are 2 categories. On the left-hand side, the bar shows in green is the 20% around significant infrastructure assets variation that reflect on the additional infrastructure asset variation that we would assume in our audit fee budget hours, 170 hours in relation to that. And newly selected material performance measures, that is not significant, but that's around 52 hours, made up about 4% of the total estimated cost. And on the right-hand side, that graph is really show our proposed fee compared to the budget and actual data from the previous financial years. In the past 2 years, the actual fee, obviously, Chantal's still in discussion with management in terms of 2024 overrun, but 172,000 was the fee charged so far. As you can see, we have significantly under recovered our audit fees in the past 2 years. For the 2023 is even less than 50%. We are conscious the tight economic environment at the moment. Would like to work together with management to minimize the audit cost and perform the audit in the most efficient way. The additional scope is just not something we can simply absorb. So this proposal has been through the OAG moderation and they ensure the fairness to both the council and Audit New Zealand. We have shared the draft to management. Not sure if you have seen the draft yet, but this presentation just to give a brief idea and bring up the discussion and see everyone's thoughts on this. So this is the end of my presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Yvonne. That's very helpful. And thankfully know where the things are going with the fee. I haven't seen the proposal, and I don't think I'm going to necessarily discuss that here, but I just want to clarify the parameters, which is that from the fee perspective, at least in terms of the standard fee, it's going to you're going to be requesting it move up $70,000 on last year, correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's the net. Just to clarify, that's what I show here is the net time fee for Audit New Zealand. There's another line item which is the OAG quality overhead cost that I have not included in the presentation, and also there's a line about the estimated reimbursement about our team go on site, these travel costs. That will be in the fee proposal letter in detail.
Yeah, look, no, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And look, I appreciate the openness. I'd like to suggest that obviously there will be, it sounds like a formal fee proposal has come through perhaps recently.
Yeah.
Can I ask Paul that you and probably Peter do the normal negotiation with before you come back to us? I don't think we're not going to negotiate that here on the floor of the meeting, Yvonne, other than thank you for being upfront for where we're at. So, committee, I'd like to perhaps talk more about the actual audit plan. Is there anything in particular that you'd like to raise as far as that's concerned? Paul, is anything from your side? Seems to be reasonably straightforward.
I mean, the only thing that's going to throw a spanner in the works for us from a practical perspective is the elections.
Yeah.
But we've got some plans around how we get the information to the current council and the new council, but that shouldn't impact the way the auditors conduct the audit.
Yeah, brilliant. So, look, I think the core issues are the core issues. Members, there's nothing there that is, sort of, as Yvonne, I think you made it quite clear, is out of the ordinary, in terms of fair asset valuations, etc. And even you've added a couple on and taken one off in terms of the performance measures to look at, and I'm sort of comfortable with that. I did note in the other one, it's certainly doing the rounds with elsewhere in the sector for those of us that have got connections with risk pool. There's a potential liability coming down the track, and again, I'll say, look, you're well know that, Peter. And again, there is a chance. Well, it is quite a substantial amount that they're going to be seeking out the sector, so it depends on where we stand relative to the individual years of the risk pool. But fair enough, Yvonne, if you want to check that one out. In benchmark reporting, we know we can discuss later, so that's fine. So Paul, that did just give me to the dates, and I just wanted to check. So on page, an unidentified page. No, it isn't. Page 157. I think it must be of our agenda. So in effect, I hear your point. The elections take things out. So this means, with an opinion on the issued on the 31st of October, is that the date you're going to recommend council meet to adopt, or is it going to be in November?
No, that'll be,
You can do it.
that's what we're aiming for,
You can do it on the 31st. Brilliant.
because I have been assured by government. We will
Sarah's the boss. Yeah.
We will have a council sworn in by that time, so that this will be
Yeah.
their first meeting for
First up.
business after the inauguration meeting.
Okay, so that gets me to the committee doing its work. Paul, obviously, we go out of business on the night of the 11th. You probably won't have an audit committee in place, I doubt, before the 31st. Our last meeting is in September, is that correct?
Yes, so if I can outline our plan.
Thank you.
We plan to have the draft that we will give to the auditors ready for audit and risk committee.
Yeah.
It will also be ready for council and meetings prior to the 11th. And what we will do is get the audit and risk council to recommend to the new council. They have looked at it, they're comfortable with what they've seen. And then as we go into the new council, we can take them through any changes that have occurred since the council and the audit and risk committee looked at the account. So they can,
so that's anything that's occurred between our last meeting in September.
Yes.
Okay.
So what comes out of the audit and anything that the auditors bring up that we need to change, then we can highlight those ones and take them through those changes, given that the baseline effectively of the annual report has been reviewed and approved by and recommended to the new council by the audit and risk and the old council.
Yeah, just anticipation that it might be wise to have some sort of saving sort of recommendation that perhaps the committee could meet perhaps by Zoom if it had to really between that date and the election in case there was any significant matters that arose, because it's a wee bit of time between September when we meet and the 11th of October. I understand your point, which makes some sense. Okay, well, that's good. So thank you for that. We know where we stand. It all makes reasonable sense to me. Chance for final questions, Tana, Sarah? Sally, we're okay?
Yep.
So that gets me back to the recommendations on page 120, which we can now approve the audit plan, the annual report for the 25 year, and recommend it to council for approval. Peter, I am conscious that we sort of semi-contractually agreeing to an audit when we haven't got the fee, but you'll have to bring that back to us.
Yeah, that's right.
Again, I would hold it open that if you needed to talk, particularly with me as chair, in the intervening period, don't hesitate to give me a call, because ultimately it's a wee bit of discussion here with a sizable number. Okay, so look, with that, four recommendations. I'm not going to go through them. They tend to make another mover and a seconder for this, please. Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Sarah. I'll put the motion then. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? It's carried. Thank you very much. Chantal, I still see you there. Yvonne, and I see you there as well. Thank you that you zoomed in today and for your work. Obviously diminishing now, Chantal, other than that importance of the LTP, and thank you for the way in which you're supporting, and Paul has mentioned, I appreciate that. And Yvonne, we look forward to developing a new relationship, and as you said, having new eyes look over us, which is not a bad thing. So I look forward to your observations and your work as we go through this as well. I do appreciate that. Can we move on, please? No worries, guys. Given I'm about an hour behind time, here we go. It's 11 o'clock. Can we just get a couple of I think we can get a couple of the items through, then we need to have a break. And I'll have to reassess and perhaps encourage myself to be a better chair. Okay, the internal audit report, please, Paul. Seems like this is a bit of an updating rather than anything else.
Yeah, it's really an update, Mr. Chairman. And the the two components that will be undertaken in the next year relate pretty much to a financial perspective. So the operational finance review and the capital expenditure review. We have budgeted $50,000 for those next year. And we will be meeting with Deloitte's in the new financial year, so July, to finalise their approach and just to sense check some of their questions, etc. So that's what we will be doing then.
Okay, so look, in fairness, Paul, I hear the constraints. It's not a big program, but it's a question: are we tackling the right things? Certainly, reading those, I'm comfortable that they are.
Yeah.
Any comments, questions from you folk on this? No. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. And again, it'd be good to get an update September when obviously you had the chance to talk with Deloitte about just confirming that. Okay, so really in progress report that we receive it. I'll move it. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Sally. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Treasury report. If I'm going to ask, I'll be going backwards, and I should be careful how I say that. Don't take us through it, mate. We're going to say everything correct, right? Haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to take the report as read. The report, the Treasury function now complies with, if you remember, the previous report
Right.
didn't. So we've undertaken. Miles has put some programs in place so that we now comply. There's not a lot more I can add to it. Miles's report. Miles is actually heading off to the States today, so he's unable to attend this. But there's nothing in there that sort of jumps out and says you need to fix this. So yeah, that's all I've seen.
Okay, so the important thing then is to just have a look at page 165, which has the box at the bottom called policy compliance. So which represent what we have agreed in advice from Miles and quite frankly also meet some pretty standard sector prudential limits that which actually are enforced by the LGFO, might I say, that we are within the various constraints, and that is correct. And I think it's fair to say the one that wasn't was previously the second line is fixed interest rate cover within policy control limits. Last time around, that answer was no. It was only by a small amount, I think about 2028 or something. So if you flip the page 166, you'll see the graph, top left-hand side, which is a bit of colourful stuff, which is all above that lower red line. So it says where it needs to be. So that's important that we just note that. All I am interested in, it's not a big drama. Perhaps next time when we get Miles back, I am interested in that box underneath the debt and cover fixed graph, with actually where he's perceiving or they're perceiving the floating rate to go, which of course you'll see in that diagram is going up. Yes. So we live in fun times or whatever it is, exciting time, whatever it is that goes with it. I'll be to see where that is going because there might be a bit more optics on that next time we meet. So it'll be useful to see that. But do you have any questions for Paul at this stage?
I do like the graphs.
You do like the graphs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the bits in green's good, isn't it? But no, it's good to just see that August and
The only thing that I think you know in the paper is that this is 40 million, they got 50 million on the box, right?
Yes, yeah, and it will be a lot. It's obviously we were aiming for 88. Well, we were saying we budgeted for 88,
Yeah.
so we're not going to.
Yeah, and that's been depending on our CapEx program. Okay, that's cool. Okay, we need to move and receive, sorry, we need to move that we receive the report. Thank you, Sarah. I'll second that. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Look, in fairness to the dashboard report, which is very interesting, we get a very favourable comments, Paul, on that. Can I suggest we take a short break for, can I make it 5 minutes? Check the phones, have a cup of tea, we'll bring it back.
like, oh, I can't read it, too hard.
But we are really behind time, and I think we may just go a wee bit after today, but I am grateful so far for the conversation we had. I mean, I thought things like, I let the issues with drinking water roll because I thought they were of a good discussion, but it has put us there behind time. And I don't want to waste time, sorry, I don't want to avoid spending reasonable time on the rest of the stuff. So I will try and be efficient, but let's just see where we get to. Paul, your new reporting, please. Tell us all.
Thank you, Bruce. So I'll take the report as read. The purpose of I guess the important bit is the attachment, which is the ELT dashboard. And what we are trying to achieve here is to present to the executive leadership team a high level view, which I don't think has been available in the past, but a high level view on the various business activities and what we in finance consider the important things that people should be looking at. What it's designed to do is trigger a conversation at the executive level to discuss variances, issues that they may be having, the key metrics, and one of the two things that we've focused on quite a lot in the past 2 or 3 of these is, for argument's sake, the staffing costs and to a lesser extent the capital completion rates. So those are highlighted here at a high level. What this goes out to the executive probably about a week before they meet, and what we're hoping they do, and we're encouraging them to do, is to go and talk to their teams about what the variances are and come back to the executive and explain the variances to their team. So they're all accountable to each other. That's why we have kept the business and governance support separate and not allocated those costs, because it's important to be able to see that as well. And you'll note that there are on your big sheet there are the financial dashboards are a little bit more detailed. There's 5 sheets there we've added at the back, so that's the type of thing that you can take away to your team, and it's almost a please explain, but it's kind of let's get the variances worked out, so then they can come up through to the ELT, and the finance team then can take those variances and they will find their way into the reports that we prepare for council. So we've put this in front of the committee on the basically seeking your views on what you might see, and if there's anything that you think we could add to this that would make it useful at a governance level rather than operational level. So do you want me to take you through it, or we've got variants?
Just the sort of snapshot bit, because I felt when I say we've discussed, I haven't been doing business before you came on board, but I asked what they were thinking. So we do have, I think we've got some comments for you, but just tell us a couple of the key things you're trying to achieve here. But
so what we're trying to do is that the variance analysis at the top, if you look at the for the traffic lights, we're not concerned necessarily about the 1 or 2% over budget or under budget, because under budget can be as bad as being over budget.
Yeah,
we're looking at the bigger range. So you know, the 15% plus or minus 15% scores are red. So you can see that these colours here indicate whereabouts it sits in the variance. So there's stuff that says, yeah, just keep a watching brief on it. There's other ones that say, you know, we're all good, we're in the range, but then there's other ones that are kind of red that say we need to put some attention on this and work out how we're going to bring these things back into line. And we may not be able to, but we need to have that conversation. It deals with the measurement against the forecast. So every year we do 2 forecasts, one after the year starts, and that's pretty much to bring in any of our unspent capital that we want to bring.
Recast, yeah.
And then the second one happens not long after Christmas, but it was delayed this time around because of the long-term plan, which brings in the, well, where do we think we're going to end up type of thing. So that's what we try and measure with the ELT. But the other side of that is we can't measure those in terms of our annual report, because our annual report deals with the published annual plan or the published long-term plan. So we need to keep bringing it back to that as well. So the key things that, we talk about staff costs at a high level, and that's, we've had some good discussion around that. We talk about the OPEX at activity level. We talk about the revenue at activity levels, and then we talk about the OPEX at the expense type. So yeah, those are the types of things on page 1. The commentary there is our first go at it as the finance team, but we're also putting it out there for additional words from the team members and the budget holders. And what this is also designed to do is reinforce the whole budgeting process, in that we make responsible the people who hold the budgets. So they are the ones that create the budgets for their activity. They are the ones who are responsible for spending the money, obviously, and they are the ones that should be able to answer the questions of why and what. Why has this happened? What went on? Type of thing. So it's more devolving the responsibilities from the ELT, where they're ultimately responsible, but it's giving the budget holders, your QPs or your Gareths of the world, the responsibility of managing their budgets and being able to answer their questions around their budgets, which is why we've got the internal audit process that is dealing with financial acumen for the business. So they're all intertwined there. And the last, I guess, moving on to page 2, just the balance of those pages are, the balance of those pages are more detail of what's on these 2 pages. We talk about a bit of a summary on the personnel costs, and then we get into the CapEx. So we're pretty much covering what we think at this point in time are the most important parts. And we talk about completion rates. This is to April. We've got a completion rate compared to our forecast of 61%. You've got 2 more months to go. Are we going to complete 100% of our capital? Probably not. Will we get close to 70%? Probably will, that type of thing. And then whether that 70% is acceptable, is it a timing issue? What type of reasons are driving that? So yeah, that's what it is. And what we're after is it useful? Because I think the ELT would be fair to say, Peter, are finding it useful. Yeah. Is it useful that it's something that, with a little bit of modification, the council would like to see?
Yep.
So that's my view, and I agree.
Yeah, I think you made the most comprehensive job with it, but it's got some thoughts. So why don't you share those?
I like it personally. This is really readable and relatable, and I think this is the public perception risk is the big one on things like the CapEx underspend and the chronic underspend. It's habitual, isn't it? Like, that's how we roll. But we're looking at money that's being put away for something that we're not achieving, and then we're doing the same again next year, the same again next year. This actually breaks it down into this is why, this is the what, this is the how it didn't work. It just gives us a bit more meat in that conversation to explain why. But I think it's time to probably have a look as well and say, why aren't we doing those things? I know it's a problem here in local government, full stop, but it's probably time to be able to look at that. Now you've got that level of reporting. This is the first year that I've really fully understood these budgets properly and where our problems are. So I think this is awesome that it goes into that level of detail. And there's little things like with the parks, there's quite a bit of underspend there that on face value doesn't look like there's anything significant that we shouldn't have done. So why aren't we? And it just gives you that tool to start looking at that. Is there a staffing problem? Is there a contract problem? Is there something? Are we just not timing that right? Is that something we can do better? No, for the first time, I think it's giving you the tools to do that. So I think it's great. But I do like spreadsheets. So maybe it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I appreciate it. And I think it's tiny. I'm really glad it's printed because shit, that screen was hard to read. But this, to me, makes a lot of sense to people that aren't particularly well versed in what we're even doing. I think you can get quite a lot of really robust information out of that. So I think it's great. Good job. Looks like it took a bit of time. But if they're going out monthly to ELT, that coming to council just for our perusal, if nothing else, I'd really appreciate that just being added to council agendas as a read through. And if anything does come from that, it's a good way of starting that conversation.
The intent would be to get it monthly.
Yeah.
It actually, it's taken me 12 months, all my time here to get it to this stage. Our systems aren't as conducive as, this is quite a man-driven process to actually pull numbers and put this together. It is not automated.
Yeah.
I mean, in my time in Army, at the 3 days within month's end, I'd get a printout of where the $420 million budget was being spent, CapEx, OpEx, PERS, and you could make decisions in February to land on your budget in June because you were better informed. Here, it's been a challenge because our systems haven't, and so the team have had to work hard to get it to this stage. And so the intent is exactly that, is to, now that, you know, the whole intent is around the internal audit, is to improve our financial acumen across the leadership team, and budget holders will have the information they need to be able to see where their budgets are at on a regular basis, so that the 2-week forecast, we might be able to improve that and actually get everything so much closer to budget, and make those decisions we need to make. If we're tracking an underspend, while we're tracking an underspend, what do we need to do? Or if we're tracking an overspend, what do we need to do to pull that back? We've just not had that level of clarity to be able to do that.
Just that more real time. You know, interim reporting in between those big milestones is really helpful, isn't it? Just to track that. So.
And then also, I guess, just what's the ongoing effect with the underspends if we're doing a whole lot of carry forwards into next financial year of actually being able to spend next year's budget?
What this has done is that it has improved our internal processes around accounts payable and the like to get stuff done quicker into the systems that we can produce this on a more timely basis. So it has worked to our advantage with respect to we've now got something to hang deadlines on, and given that we're a council and we have reasonably complicated contracts with suppliers, and there's a whole bunch of, you know, we'll get an invoice, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that sits under that. Being able to push the, you know, the timing of getting those things into the system, or making an estimate and accruing it, because at the end of the day, as far as, you know, this is a set of management accounts designed at this point in time for the management team to manage the business. You know, it's not as accurate as something that Don might prepare from a financial accounting perspective, where everything is accrued correctly. There's a little bit of play in this, where we make estimates rather than use exact. But I think it kind of has driven improvements in our processes as well. So that's something to, I guess, take heed of.
Tamo, is there anything you've been very passionate in and you'd like to add or comment on the financial reporting? Go on. Paul, just a couple of comments, questions from me really. So Peter, you mentioned lack of automation dealing with this, and I know that you're moving to monthly reporting for. How much effort does it take? Are you able to reduce the effort to do that and the manual risk of error.
I think, and Donna can jump in and correct me if I make a commit us to something.
Yeah.
You've got the right of veto here, Donna, I think, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, look, I think that the issues that we have had in the past in terms of delivering a set of accounts is around the timing of getting the invoices in, that type of thing. Right? So that part sits with the rest of the business, and I think that the rest of the business is picking up a challenge and improving around that. In terms of getting this out, it's probably 2 or 3 days worth of Kasawick's time.
I think it's more going through the numbers rather than compiling the numbers.
Yeah. And it's just checking them. Yeah.
And making sure that there isn't something that's been missed, that we could be doing a journal for, or something like that.
Yeah. So I don't think, and when I get back to my desk, Kasawick, if he's listening, I don't think that there's, once we've got the information in the system, getting it out of the system is relatively quick. Checking it takes a little bit of time. But I don't see that as being any different to a service we should be providing anyway. So that's part of the reason we are here, is to provide good information to the rest of the business to enable them to make decisions. So, yeah.
So a couple of other questions from you, if that's okay. Peter, ELT ownership of this?
Yeah.
Question mark?
No, definitely, because we know we need to make better financial decisions, and we know that our financial acumen across our organisation is not where it should be for budget managers. And where we've got to in the past is just through lack of visibility and lack of knowledge, and you can't rely on the finance team to control your budget. If you've got the exercising authority over there, you need to be able to be responsible for that. And so this is part of that process around trying to upskill across the organisation. But first of all, you need to have some clarity, because if you just go into Magic now and I look at the budgets, it's just too confusing for someone who's only got bloody school seat, bloody maths type thing, you know? You need something that can drill down so that all GMs now get this, their leadership teams will have access to this. And it should, as we become more mature, enable us to make much better decisions, because we're much better informed.
Brilliant things out of the internal audit, but that might draw us out. But Paul and Donna, what's the level of, business support, partnering, whatever that phrase I want to use, between the finance function and budget holders? Because I absolutely agree with the point. Principle, we're talking principles, yes, budget holders accountable, not you guys, but there's always that support needed. How does that look inside the organisation at this stage?
We have tried, well, when I say we've tried something different, it's since I started, so I don't know what happened before that, but we've assigned accountants, for want of a better term, to various parts of the business, and the business knows that they can come and talk to, and it might be, Donna's one of them. They can. I had a conversation with a team and their direct reports around this. So we're always available, and we are there to help. So we will go and talk to people if they want us to come and talk to them about stuff. They can come and talk to us. They've got a couple of options there in terms of who they can talk to. So we've assigned various groups and various finance team members. So and we've been always started to push that mantra of, you are the budget holder, you are responsible, how can we help you?
I sense that, I don't know, Donna, if you're doing the role, you may have views on this, but I sense that something will have to develop and enhance over time. I don't think it's that for a non-accountant to go and have a chat to a Donna who knows everything about it. So, I'm not, let's not have a crack at you, Donna, but I'm just reflecting for this to really work in the organisation. It takes a bit of work. That's probably the consultant will be talking rather than anything else. So look, what I would take. Oh, sorry. Another thing is the primary financial reporting up to council goes what, to full council?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Yes.
So Sarah, you're sort of saying you think this is what your colleagues would like to see.
I think we need to see it. I think
is that something that you anticipated, or is there a more rolled up version?
Definitely, yes, and I think absolutely yes. At the moment, our financial report is sort of quarterly.
Yeah.
And so we could attach this quarterly, when we get the greater frequency, at the moment, we're probably on about 2 months.
Yeah.
So quarterly might work initially, and as we get, it becomes a little bit more automated, then it could be faster. But the intent is to put it in front of audit risk and put it in front of council, and it's also publicly available online right now.
Which is great, yeah. So Sarah, I agree. So thank you. I mean, you want to raise it. I always am a bit resistant to government setting too much detail. I wouldn't want to go more than this, but actually I would like to reflect there is a feeling amongst many elected members that they want to see the line by line. This isn't that far off actually. So well done. I think it, it meets that sort of test. For a discussion outside, I would go, I personally would see that, I'd like to see it rolled up a bit high. But that's not the story, particularly around the financial strategy as in contrast to what is essentially the management position. But that's another story, which is important. You're right, down now.
We did ask the question.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, look, I'm always keen that as a government we just see the rolled up P&L, balance sheet, cash flow and FIS. Okay. And actually knowing that our financial strategy is based around some key assumptions, land sales. I don't disagree with it. They should pick us off over that. We discussed that last time, but I want to know the land sales are going there. To know what are the core assumptions we had around our debt. What's happened now that we're not achieving our capital program, we're not taking on the debt, how does that affect our financial strategy? You understand what I'm saying? So I would be saying to councillors, this is really valuable, use it in the way that I think you will find helpful, Sarah, but don't take your eye off the big picture about where you want to be. So it's actually me wanting to have my cake and eat it too, Paul, as you I want to do all the time. Hey, that's really helpful. Thank you for that. So big uptick, Peter, Paul, Donna, well done, and we'll look forward to seeing how that develops. Certainly look interested. This actually now brings back into the picture the internal audit program. You've got anticipated the issue around financial. So it'd certainly be a good time for us to revisit how this is actually looking. Well, thank you for that. Can I move to the chair that we received for the report? Again, doesn't seem like with appreciation or whatever the right words are, but that's great. Thank you, Sarah. I'll move it. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Brilliant. With other staff you can see there's a bunch of accountants in here, and we've waxed eloquent about accounting for a long time. So thank you for waiting patiently. But I want to deal with health and safety now, please. DJ. Thank you, Donna. Appreciate your presence. Good morning. How are you? Good.
Right, so I take it the report has been read and received.
Thank you. Yep.
Good. So this is going back to from the 1st of January to the 31st of March period. So to start with, the main thing at the start of the year was the entertainment certified that the display test building structure and has now moved forward substantially planning to rebuild and things. So that was the main one that we were looking for at the beginning. Obviously the removal of the site, road closure things. So secondly, the loan worker solution. So we did trial a couple of devices back in February, and we have moved on with those, and they are due to arrive at council today. Not 7 enrichment devices on the way. So that'd be good. So just start looking through the procedures and policy as well. And good deployment of those. Then the main focus for next month. We also, the executive leadership team, we did a field trip out to the Alton wastewater treatment plant. So all done their PPE and out we went, which was really good observation of the risks and controls that are currently in place out there, and understanding how that sort of comes together. And so that was really great. Our next one that we've got is we're going to be planning that for the roading team. But they're just a bit quiet over winter, so that's probably more likely to be again this year. If you want any of the lead indicators discussed with you guys, and
Let's see whether what questions members might have, Nita. It's a very good report, thank you. Which, as you said, we've taken through. So I just to know whether with any questions you'd like to raise, Sarah. So I suspect Hannah is otherwise occupied. Everyone should be on the screen.
She's coming in and out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Any questions you folk out there after Nita?
No, it's good to read. That's a really readable for a start. Some things aren't always. There's a lot of information, isn't there? But yeah, I like the way it's laid out and the graph stuff. The information within as well is really encouraging overall.
And great that you've got that language of solution, those government
Yeah,
and
that's
riches sort of that's from, you know.
I was about to bring one arrived this morning, so I should bring one in.
I've got one.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well,
And they work remotely in the middle of nowhere. I can tell you that. Yeah, really great.
Oh, right, okay. Well, it's good to know. Anita, just a couple of questions for me. Actually, an observation, we talked about lead indicators, and where's the graph? You've got the lost time injuries going down. I think, is it that one going down? The lost time injury trend is, if I read this correct, moving down, which is a good way to have it, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's zero for this reporting period, it's zero for the previous 12 months.
Yeah.
We have heard registered one incident, so not next time.
It reflects actually, you can never rest on your laurels. Yeah.
It is good to see that it has come down, and this was that one, March last year, and so just come out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I was just at a chief executive who last week for local government. One new CE within his first month of starting a new council had 4 or 5 reasonably significant accidents occur, which to him realised that there is a health and safety issue. The culture's not right, you know, so you have to be vigilant. You can't be complacent.
I think I had Sarah, I don't know whether she might have flicked around it, was an opinion piece, which there are, I suspect, politics behind it, but actually it was the first couple of lines, which were, what are the conditions that give rise, you know, which you'll never remove from your work environment. One of them was resting on, not my phrase, resting on the laurels, so I agree, Peter. And you've obviously experienced it, I've experienced it nearly firsthand elsewhere in other councils as well, which is devastating when it occurs. Nita, I was last time quite interested in the wellbeing initiatives you did, and there were some great things you're actually doing, and I think you've got those listed somewhere here towards the end of the report. One of the things that, and I appreciate you giving us the EAP work, might even be, Peter, that you've got some views on this. Always interested in the indicators. One might say a slightly downward trend or negative trend in terms of work-related reasons for people to be approaching EAP. Clearly they have to be anonymous, but the themes were there. Was there anything that you or Peter, ELT, have taken out of those sorts of themes? Comms, job satisfaction, workplace change, and organisational culture.
Yeah, look, people have such busy lives that no longer can. It's very difficult just to separate your private life and your personal and your business life and all that sort of stuff. They interrelate. So, I mean, what the EAP has helped forward. We realise that there's issues that we have to address, but we'll address them through our wellness policy and health and safety. But you also you have to be empathetic to that there's actually other issues going on in people's lives, and that in itself is going to require support and management through to obviously try and get the best out of the people.
Thanks for that. I agree. There are 1 or 2 matters there that Nita, I'm interested in is comms. General communication is always, you know, we always find ways to say it can be better. So I don't want to beat us up over that. I just wonder how much reflection, I mean, again, with the anonymity of EAP, but perhaps thinking more broadly, and I mean, today's not the day to do it, but I just wonder whether there's more that can be thought through in terms of comms. It's probably really good here, by the way, and I don't know what it is, but I just would reflect, if that's the number one stressor that has been pinned to the workplace, wonder whether there's some thought that can be put around that.
Yeah, and that seems to have improved too, moving throughout like the last, I've seen. And around that time, I think just the pressure between seeing, teams of LTP not going on and the build up to Christmas and then coming through that. And it seems to be more around communicating within the teams and with the managers and staff and just getting that balance right.
Yeah.
And with certain strategies and things that has seen an improvement from looking at the last report. So, which is encouraging, which is good.
Good. Okay, well, that's great. Thank you for that. So if we could then look at the resolution which is received. Can I take it that you might move that, Sally?
Sure.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yep.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried.
It's good.
Thank you, Anita. Appreciate that. Okay, time for just wrapping up a few things. I'm comfortable to leave my comments. Peter, before you guys came in, we had probably 3 or 4 discussions around various things. Just the things that were on top of my mind, and I just pass it on, have them on the record what it's worth. I was interested in some of actually it was today's paper, and I've seen it elsewhere as well on LinkedIn, people trying to work out how many councils have and haven't joined up with 3 waters. And
Not many.
well, there was 20 that were still outside. I clearly we are doing the, the express, perhaps the more non-express view that actually there should be a bit of ponying up, and we're doing that well. So that's okay. I still think the biggest issue for us is the minister's decision, but I don't suspect we're going to be on the wrong side of that. But I'm also conscious that you make a decision. 1, let's be upfront. 2, you got to get the water service delivery plan in place. But then there's the minister's decision. I've always thought it will be interesting, but I suspect I would hope it would only be encouraging from our work. We talked briefly about the benchmarking, which I take it you folk are aware of. The DIA have done this and didn't quite realise the speed with which it was coming in. So I've been interested in the last week to see it coming through and look the clear concerns being expressed by the sector about some relatively raw data, and even I think what you said, Peter, to me this morning, that we're being compared in a reasonably raw and non-nuanced way with other councils, which means, being very careful. I've got a council tomorrow that I'm going to, a metro, where I think they're going to be very careful in making certain that actually the website replicates the dashboard that is going to be put out by DIA, but also talks about our story. Why are we in those positions? Because I understand it's an attempt to try and, for combat potential challenges that will come from reasonably simple headlines that will be there, number of staff, from to your neighbours and blah, blah, blah.
And real lack of context.
Yes, that's the point. Yeah. So I think this council is trying to make certain that the website at least gives half a chance that somebody might pick up the actual context from data that's actually given. DIA possibly sound a bit like a regulator. Okay, regional deals, Peter. I said was interested to know where things were at here and understand that we may be part of some deal making going on. Obviously, see where it goes. I was actually interested because it is clear that. Sorry, I should be careful. I have had little optics on it. What I'm seeing coming out from up north is the level of expectation around prime investment into those deals, whether it be private sector or I'm thinking of one particular case where the balance sheet of a particular council will be used significantly because it's got the capacity.
I haven't seen no investment from the government.
Yeah, that's right.
But it is an ongoing discussion.
Yeah.
In this region.
A sense of is there a sense that you might know at some point?
Yes. We hope to bring a paper to council on the 25th of this month.
Yeah.
We know that their papers now with cabinet. and until cabinet sign off on things,
Yeah.
they're very.
Right,
They're playing it pretty close to their chest.
Oh, and we should respect their fact. I mean, I should respect their fact too, rather than trying to say there's more to say here at this stage, other than the fact that we've got to wait for cabinet to make.
But we expect cabinet to make a decision on the 23rd of this month.
Yeah. Oh, you talked to me about, did you have a name for the future council? You mentioned a week to me, what was that?
The future council.
Yeah, post Three Waters.
Oh, what do you call it? The Great Reset.
The Great Reset, the Great.
I'm not sure I want to use that term anymore, Chairman.
Well, I think it's important to have a word for it because it is going to be a different council. And I was just noting RM reform is getting a bit of, this now becoming more relevant. I must confess that probably my regional colleagues doesn't hear concerns, but it's sitting here, so no drama.
But interesting on that point, so not that Wellington is a great example, but even with Wellington Water, which no council in Wellington had water staff. It was all gone in 2014 to an entity. But all council had to do was financially account for the cost and the budget. But the amount of work that was required by the infrastructure manager, chief executive and others to be engaged in with Wellington Water, it was quite significant. And the same with the resource consents team and the planning consents team, because that company does the engineering approval for. So there was, you sort of give everything away, but then you actually have a pile of coordination you have to do with them. So there's always things that it's not quite over there and forgotten about. I suspect there's going to be a chunk of work that's still going to have to be required to be done.
I would suspect with Three Water reform or RM reform, for a council like us here at Central Otago, that need is going to be high because we've got a growing population, development needs. We're going to have to make certain and argue that development occurs consistent with our priorities and our community priorities rather than. Which is going to be based, by the way. You get it.
We have to pick that argument. That's for something to be settled during the transition.
Yeah, that could be a little political issue for you. Where is Southern Water going to be based?
Somewhere southern.
Somewhere. That's right. Okay, that's cool. And look, the other question I had was actually it was council market. I know that's sort of near on the process, and also the draft LTP, for which we've had a good discussion this morning. So that's fine by me. So I don't think there's anything else there. So I do think you have to move a report. That my comments be received. Can somebody move that, please? Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sally. Put the motion of those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. Anything you guys want to raise? Tell us the good news, Sally. I've heard about 5 times. I need to hear it 6, please. Tell us all. Come on.
We won an award. We won 2 awards on Friday night for the Roxburgh Swimming Pool. We got a merit award at the biggest property council awards in Auckland. There were 1,500 people at the awards, and we were up against Commercial Bay Development in Auckland, which was a $1 billion project. And our $3 million pool got a merit up against them. So that was pretty exciting. And we also won. Sarah was at the awards on Friday night in Queenstown, and we won best in category for public architecture at the Southern Architecture Awards. And she texted me when I was at the other awards in Auckland and said that we just won an award. Unfortunately, we weren't there to collect that one.
I was too pissed to get up there and get there. I didn't know it was coming.
I did ask her if she could go and get my award.
It's a freebie, what can I say?
So that's good news for Oxford. That's well done. Anything else you guys would like to raise at all?
It's very well celebrated.
I was just going to mention the other thing was Council Mark, which you've mentioned, is that there's a couple of us councillors, Tamer, myself and Martin, that are sitting on a group internally within council for that, and I think that is going to give us some really good information, particularly around our financials and stuff, having that done and getting benchmarked. So that's going to be a good.
Yeah, why don't put stuff up for it?
Yeah.
Who would volunteer to be reviewed? But actually, it's a good idea. So
and it started.
Yeah, and it started. Yeah.
So they're actually on site now.
No, but in terms of the information gathering and they're filling in their templates.
Yeah.
It's been for last month now.
But it's an information grab, isn't it? I mean, it is a significant toll on the organisation. But so, well, I think it's really good that council's engaged in that. Okay, we're going to move to the chair. We received the reports from the members. Do we have a seconder, please? Thank you, Sally. The motion, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, it's carried. Governance report, anything that we need to look at there? To be honest, I think I'm going to take this read. There was nothing there that attracted my direct attention, so I'm going to move from the chair that we received the report over second of this. Thank you, Sarah. I'll put the motion, all those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. 5 September is the date of the next meeting. It's in my diary. You'll be pleased to know. So we can go to a resolution then, please, that we move into PX for the reasons. I think they're all put down good to me. So I'm going to move that. I've second. Thank you, Sarah, that we go into PX. Any discussion on that motion? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Thank you. It is 5 minutes to 12. We are going to be going to 12:30. Is that okay with you guys?